All right, welcome, brethren, ladies, and friends, to our inaugural show dedicated to the Natoma Lodge 64, Folsom, California, and Masonic Education. Uh, it is important to note that the views expressed in this show are strictly the views of the hosts and guests and do not reflect the views of Natoma Lodge 64 nor of the Grand Lodge of California. We will keep the conversations very basic and will not discuss anything that will violate our obligations. If you have any ideas or topics that can be covered by the show, please email us at 3katd64 at gmail.com. And in getting to this, I kind of forgot to mention the name of the show. Great start. Three knocks at the door at Natoma 64.
Ooh,
So,
I like it.
yeah, there we go. So my name is Jeff Joe. I am currently the junior warden at Natoma 64. Was raised back in 2012 at San Mateo Lodge back in the Bay Area, and moved up here in 2020 and joined Natoma Lodge in 2022. And I love this lodge. I love the brothers here, and hoping that we can use this as a medium to get to the brothers that can't make it to lodge as much, or brothers who have moved out of state and want to keep in touch with the lodge. So, and also talk about other lodges and events and appendant bodies, in the area. So, we'll see what we can do here. So next we'll go with Worshipful Brother Noel Lucas.
Thank you, Brother Joe. Yeah, my name is Noel Lucas. I am the current master in Natoma Lodge number 64. I was raised in 2019, and I've been part of this lodge ever since. Love my lodge, love being part of it. We're always looking to explore different ways to bring in new members. Looking for fun ways to explore new activities, and that is what I love about our lodge. Our lodge is steeped in ritual, but also looking for new ways to engage, right? And so this opportunity presented itself, and Brother Joe brought it to my attention, and I thought this would be a fantastic way to reach out to not only members of our lodge, but possibly other members of other lodges, and just see what we could do, kind of play around and give an opportunity to capture a little bit of the history of our lodge while exploring opportunities to see what's going on in the world of Masonry, and just talk to other brothers and take any opportunity we could to record this and capture it for further light. And the great thing about it is we're going to kick this one off by talking to one of our past masters of Natoma Lodge, Worshipful Brother Eric Wells, who has been around for quite some time and been a history, a wealth of knowledge, been a mentor to many of us, and currently sits on our board of trustees, and has helped me personally in many ways, not just from the board of trustees standpoint, but also just preparing for my year in the East. And I know he's helped many other brothers and continues to. So it's with great pleasure that I introduce Worshipful Brother Eric Wells. We'll kick off this little conversation here.
Well, thank you, Worshipful Noel. I'm not sure I'm deserving of such accolades, but it's a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure to support Brother Jeff Joe, who brought this idea forward. And one of the things that Masonry can be very guilty of is relying only on the past and not thinking about new ways to bring the light of Masonry forward and get it out under the bushel that it can sometimes hide under. And while I've always been reluctant to use social media because of the way it can be used improperly, in this one instance, I applaud Brother Jeff Joe, and we are so extremely lucky to have him join. This is San Mateo Lodge's loss was our gain to have Brother Joe
Absolutely.
join our lodge and bring fresh ideas and still embrace our past and become a wonderful brother within our lodge. So I'm honored to be here. The fact that I get to be the first one to do this is an honor that's beneath me, but I'm beneath this honor, I should say, and but I'm going to do my best to live up to the expectations. I've had the pleasure of serving as master of this lodge in 2003, and subsequent to that, serving as Grand Sword Bearer under the Most Worshipful Frederick Sorsabal, who is no longer with us, and I miss terribly. And from there, I've had the pleasure of holding various offices within our Hall Association, Board of Trustees, and several other honoraries, such as the Hiram Award, of which I don't know why they gave it to me. I'm not deserving, but I'll take it. And I'm here to answer questions and hopefully give information that inspires the brethren of Natoma to continue to make our lodge one of the beacons of light, a beacon of light on the hill, so to speak, within our community and within California.
Well, Worshipful, I think we'll start from the beginning. I got to talk to you a little bit about your Masonic journey at the picnic recently, and I really enjoyed learning about how you came to Masonry. So, would you like to kind of share the beginning of your Masonic journey?
Sure. Although we got to be careful because, of course, in the beginning is a piece of ritual that we like to cite, and I'm not sure that everybody wants to go all the way back that far. But yeah, my Masonic journey started back in in Natoma. It started in 1998, where I joined by affiliation, and I maintain plural membership with Chico Leland Stanford Lodge number 111, which is my mother lodge, just as San Mateo is for Jeff. And I joined that lodge as an enter apprentice in either late 93 or early 94, I think it was, and subsequently was raised a Master Mason in July. I'm not sure if it was July 14th, but July of 1994. As a Mason there, I did not join the progressive line or any other function. I attended when I could. And it was after I finished graduate school in Chico that I then came down moved into the Folsom area. And subsequent to that was seeking out a replacement for my Masonic journey, because it was one of those things where, wow, once you stepped away from it, the hole became very empty and the longing very acute to find another lodge that was in that area. And that's where I landed in Natoma, 64, and after being in Folsom for a little less than a year, and then subsequently joined. So yeah, where did it all begin? In Chico, 120 miles north of us, and now this is where it resides.
Now, what brought you into Masonry, though, Worshipful?
So, very good question, and I found it when you ask this of any man, any brother, you'll typically get a different answer almost every time. Each man's journey appears to be unique. Sometimes they fall into various categories. It's family member, friends, person they respected, reading history books. A lot of influences can go into a person making a decision to join Masonry. And in my case, it was due to two primary influences. One from a man I never met, and then another whom I respected very much. And then the catalyst of all of it was one of those random events that occurs in your life. So after describing this in a very nebulous way, I'll get into the details. My grandfather was a member of a lodge that no longer exists in Hayward, California. And my grandfather, this is on my mother's side, and I never met. He passed away in 1963 of Hodgkin's disease, and I was born in 67. So within that gap, unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to know him. But of course, I learned about his legend and his glamour from the pictures that I had and the stories that my grandmother or my mother or my aunts would tell me about my grandfather, who we share a name in the fact that his first name was Lloyd and the L in my middle name is Lloyd. So my middle name was taken after him, a man I never met. So that always intrigued me because Masonry was very important to him, obviously. He was a Mason of a lodge in Hayward, and his brother-in-law was also a Mason of a different lodge. And I happen to still have both of their aprons that you'll see in my case. And maybe someday we'll build a shadow box and put them up on a wall at Natoma Lodge. So that was the man I didn't meet. And then there was the man I did. So my grandmother, let's just say that after my grandfather passed away, she gravitated towards other men in keeping company with them. One of them happened to be a Mason. Now, she also had a couple other guys in her life, so she definitely enjoyed the company of other men in keeping with having companionship to go out on dates and things like that. But one particular man in particular was Ralph Peterson, and he was a Mason of some regard at Live Oak Lodge, which was in Oakland at the time. I believe they're number 61, although they no longer exist. They consolidated. And because of his association with my grandmother, he grew up as a surrogate grandfather figure and would always tell me about his exploits within Masonry. And so as I was going through high school, one of the things that he did was encourage me to apply for a Masonic scholarship that was out of the Oakland Scottish Rite. So which I did, and obviously he used his influence to help in that regard. And that became my first encounter with how Masonry can help an individual, because I received a 4-year scholarship from that. It was called the Scaife Scholarship from the Oakland Scottish Rite, and it helped me very much in paying my way through UC Berkeley from 1985 to 1989. And so it was through that lens that I received, obviously, a very favorable view of Masonry, and through my surrogate grandfather. And then one of these random encounters, then this leads me to share the randomness of life, which is it was either late 93 or early 94, a man a phone call came in to the automobile dealership that I happened to be working at up in Chico, where I had returned after let's just say an aborted attempt to join corporate America after my genetics degree from UC Berkeley in 1989. So I returned home, needed a job, and yes, I sold cars. So I'm working at the local dealership there, and I get a phone call from a woman who says her husband is elderly and needs to. He knows he's going to pass, and he wants to make sure that she has a good car for transportation. And so they're interested in these 1990 Ford Thunderbirds, all white, all built exactly the same. We had a gazillion of them. So they were all on sale for, insert price here, $13,999. And he wanted to do it, but he was incapable of driving anymore, and she wasn't able to come out either. And so I offered to bring one to wherever it was they were, because of course I'm a car salesman. I got to move metal, right? I'm desperate for a sale. And so I offered to bring it out to the widow, he was not a widow at the time, but to this elderly couple, to their home. I said, you can take a look at it at your house. And they agreed. So I drove out to Oroville, which is another community outside of Chico, about 17, 18 miles away, and to their house and meet the husband and wife, and the husband is has no longer has his voice box. He either had laryngeal cancer or some form of health issue where they had to remove his voice box, so he spoke with one of those resonators that you hold up against your throat in order to speak. That was why he didn't call. She did. So we sat in their kitchen at their kitchen table, and we discussed what it was that they were hoping to do regarding finding transportation for her. And that's, of course, when he said, well, I have a trade-in. I said, oh, okay. Let's see what we're going to do about that. And so I walk into the garage, and there is a pristine Lincoln Mark III from 1974 in baby blue with a Landau white top and 20,000 miles on it, with a Masonic sticker in the back window. And I went, oh, you're a Mason? He says, yeah. So, I've always thought about joining. I told him about my family history. And so I took the car back to the dealership. For those of you who've been in the car business, you know that the used car manager is affectionately called lowball. And he certainly gave a lowball number. But I negotiated this deal with who was eventually to become my brother, and we closed it. And so I did everything remotely, drove back and forth, drove the new car to them, took the old car back. It was quite the rodeo. And then 2 months later, I called them and said, I'm ready to join. Would you give me an application? And he became my top line signer. And the journey began.
That's an awesome story, Worshipful, and I really appreciate you sharing that. I'd also like to just go back a little bit, just back to the scholarship story as well. And I hope I'm not oversharing, because you and I have had the privilege of serving on a scholarship committee for some time now, and you've shared the story a couple times in there, and every time you told it, and I love hearing it because you got the scholarship from the Scottish Rite, and one of the things that I loved the most was that they held you accountable during that.
Oh, gee, Noel.
And
Thanks for bringing that up.
But I loved it because it was we always talk about us being a guiding light and there, right?
Yeah.
And that's how I always took it. That's how I always saw it. It was like they, it wasn't just here and they're done with you. It was they were there with you the whole time.
Yeah. Oh
right?
boy, were they.
Yeah.
So what was interesting about the particular scholarship I received, called the Scaife Scholarship, and it was named after a fellow, I believe his name was William Scaife, and he was actually not a Mason. He was a physician who had received support from a Mason and was paying it forward. I think he got a pocket watch and a few other things. We'd really need to talk to the Oakland Scottish Rite to get the full story of the Scaife Scholarship, or maybe go online and take a look. They probably have it all written up, and my memory is a little bit faded on the particulars. But he had, at the end of his life, he donated, because he had such respect for the Masons, even though he was not one, he donated to the Scottish Rite a portion of his fortune when he passed away, and used that to seed the Scaife Scholarship. And so the Oakland Scottish Rite has a vast endowment when it comes to scholarships, and a very rigorous program, well organized, of Masons and Scottish Rite members who are who do interviews. It's almost like a job interview, right? It's like one of these corporate hiring things. They invite a bunch of kids. They all, have submitted their applications. They get interviewed by a variety of brothers. The brothers deliberate, and then they have all these different scholarships they can award, the SCAFE scholarship being one of them. And so they awarded it, and it had strings, and that was maintaining a certain grade point average throughout your career. Well, let's just say that while I would consider myself a fairly bright fellow, I was the big fish from a aptitude perspective in a small pond from a small school. And when you get to UC Berkeley, well, guess what? You're now average. And you better work hard in order to maintain that grade point average. But I had discovered other social things that distracted me from my studies. And I pursued those social avenues to their fullest, to the point where I let my grade point average drop below the minimum requirement that was necessary to maintain my scholarship. But the Scottish Rite did not abandon me. They said, "You need to get your stuff in one sock, young man, and we will give you 1 year to do so." And they had given me, as part of the scholarship, there was a requirement to maintain correspondence with a mentor that they had provided. And remember, this is 1985. Internet doesn't exist, so we still did things called write letters in cursive with pencils and paper and envelopes that we would lick and stamps that we had to lick. They did not have self-stick on them, and they probably cost about 10 cents back then. And so I had maintained my relationship. My mentor who was assigned was a brother who lived in Piedmont, a well-to-do area. And if I remember correctly, he had been a vice president and editor of a newspaper or some sort of publication. And we stayed in contact. And I realized that I needed to, I was putting my my career at Berkeley in jeopardy because of the way I had prioritized or not prioritized my time. And by my junior year, I was on the dean's list, and I got my stuff in one sock, just as they said I needed to. And so, yes, they taught me what it's like to have something and then potentially let it slip away. And you have a choice. Do you step up or do you step out? And I think that that's a life lesson that we all, I hope everybody gets actually that opportunity to make that kind of decision, and hopefully they make the right one. And I was just very, very fortunate that they offered me that opportunity to do the right thing.
The part I love the most about that story, and please understand, that was not meant to try to embarrass you. It's just the fact that it was that time frame. The kids nowadays, they with instant communication, text message, email, all that stuff. Like you said, they had to write it, they had to mail it, they had to wait. Correspondence was much slower, but they took that time and they did it to keep you on track, to look out for you. And I always loved that part of the story. I always thought it was just amazing and a fun part of it. And I know we're kind of on track to kind of working our way towards that. And I'm just happy to be part of that. And it always makes me excited. I love our scholarship program. I know we're still kind of in a smaller stage of it, and we're working to get bigger. But every time you tell that story, I always focus on that little portion of it. And it makes me very excited to see where we're going and how far we've come along too.
We really have. We have a lot of great brothers in our history to thank for our scholarship program, especially since it was established so many years ago. I can't recall the exact date, but it was 60 or 70 plus years ago, when Natoma Lodge was really not very affluent. But they still felt that was important. And I have always had an eye towards emulating the Scottish Rites program for Natoma, and it has been one of my personal passions to try to build our endowment to the point where we could fund a similar program to what I participated in. And that remains one of my long-standing goals. and with the good fortune that our lodge has had, we're on the cusp of at least being able to award our first 4-year degree or 4-year scholarship, as opposed to the 1-year scholarships that we have been doing traditionally in the past. Very excited about it. When we get the right candidate, it's going to be amazing. And then, once you do that first one, then it's just a matter, how I'm going to be. How can we get to the second? What's the second going to be like?
Exactly.
What's the criteria, right? Who's the profile of student we're going to help next? That is one of the things that drives me when I think about making Natoma Lodge a force for good in our community.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, and it excites me very much so too. And I love seeing the brothers getting involved and the feedback and the conversations we've been having with it. So looking forward to seeing where we go with that.
Keep our fingers crossed, partner. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It'll happen for sure.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting there. Just got to find the right person and, all in the right time.
Well, what's next on the docket? Now that I'm going to call you Barbara Walters. You made me cry. I guess that was Noel. So
I guess let's move into as you kind of progress through the line. Do you have any advice for anybody who's thinking about possibly going into the line? Or
yeah, and this advice is directly targeted. So I'm going to embarrass potentially a brother, a worshipful whom I love and adore. His name is Wes Minderman. And he was past master of our lodge, I want to say in either 2006 or 2007, about 3 years after, maybe 4, after I was. So Wes happened to be one of the candidates who was initiated, passed, and raised during my year, and I took it upon me to be his personal coach through that process. And this was back still, I'm trying to remember. I'm pretty sure we weren't full form, but I think he did full form. I believe he did. And one of the things I told him, or I shared with Wes, was, all right, so as he's getting ready to give his 3rd degree and his 3rd degree proficiency, I said, listen, what's going to happen as soon as you get your 3rd is the jackals are going to come after you. So all the concordant bodies, right, they're all very interested in increasing their membership. As they have shrunk in membership, just like all fraternal organizations have since their zenith in the 60s in California. I mean, if you think about it, California Masonry hit its zenith in the late 60s, and I want to say the numbers were something like 250,000 members, and now we're somewhere in the 60s. It's been a while since I've looked at the numbers, so my numbers could very well be off, but I think it's somewhere around 70,000 members now in California, and that is obviously all the other concordant bodies, York Rite, Scottish Rite, Shrine, they have subsequently decreased as well, and so they come hard at the new members, right? And we all know that our cable tow is a elastic piece of rope. Sometimes it can stretch quite far. Sometimes it's very restricted. And I always warn the new Master Mason to be careful about getting themselves overextended. There's going to be so many different opportunities, and they're all so wonderful that it will be really easy to quickly overextend yourself. The other thing that will happen is those guys in the progressive line will recognize good quality candidates, and they will come after you to join. Don't you want to be an officer? Oh, of course you do. And the universal advice I give is take a year, don't join anything. Don't commit to anything. Just enjoy your Blue Lodge. Go to these other events, these other concordant bodies, learn about them, ask members who are members about them. And then after that year cooling off period, start to consider and make your choices about which organization or which responsibility resonates with you. Is it with your hall association? Is it with some other committee? scholarship committee, charity committee, those sorts of things. Is it the line? Is it shrine? Is it Scottish Rite? Is it York Rite? And then start easing your way into those things and make sure that you're balancing your life just as we teach in the first degree with the 24-inch gauge. And so that's the advice that I give to all new Masons. And that was the advice I gave to Wes Minderman. And then, let's see, I was coaching him maybe as my senior warden. So then I turned right around because I was going to be master of the lodge and said, wouldn't you like to be my junior deacon? Or maybe it was senior deacon. I can't remember which one he started as, but you know,
Jumping right in there.
I took his arm and twisted it behind his back, and 3 years or 4 years later, he was master of the lodge. So, and he's gone on to be our secretary. And for those of you who know Worshipful Wes Minderman, you know what a marvelous man he is and how he has dedicated and extended himself to a variety of our organizations. So be happy he didn't take my advice, because had he, who knows what might have happened. But that is the advice I give to all new Masons is take it easy, enjoy your Blue Lodge, learn about these other organizations, and then start making your choices. But if you get the opportunity, join Jeff's progressive line. That would be.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, now going back to your line and your time in the East, if you could change anything or do anything over again, is there anything you would
Wow.
adjust or do different or
Let's see. I'm trying to think about all the things that happened. I don't know that I could, even if I could teleport back in time. We were so even if I had a hot tub time machine and I could jump in, for those of us old enough to remember that movie, and go back to 2003, we had a unique opportunity. I was presented with a unique opportunity, and that was the resurgence of Masonry that you now see, that we have seen, which was a reversal of what had been happening in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Suddenly, a huge crop of men became very interested in the craft. And it was not unlike, for Folsom at the time was also, going through an extreme growth period from an economic and, migration perspective. We had a lot of people that were moving to the area. And between the interest in Masonry and that influx of population, we had a tremendous number of candidates. In my year, we initiated, if I remember correctly, we initiated 12, passed 11, and raised 10 Masons. And if you think about the fact that that's, do the math, right? 12 and 11 and 10, that's 33 degrees. How many weeks are there in a year? There's 52.
That's a lot of weeks.
All right, so there's 52. And take 12 weeks out because you got stated meetings. And so basically we were doing a degree every week. So there was, so there was no time. Mine was not a week, or mine was a year that you couldn't add new programs or change things. I think we had one practice. And after that, it was how many degrees are you doing that week? Was it one? Was it a double? And that became our biggest challenge. And so, sure, I would have loved to have gone back and maybe started a new program or bolstered an additional program, but we didn't have that opportunity. We had all these men who wanted to join, and so our obligation was build the army. And so we did degree meetings every week, and we rarely had a practice. It was hope your proficiency work is good, because we're jumping right in, because we got a double degree. We got a double second degree on our second week, and then an enterprise degree on our third week, and a third degree on our fourth week, and then it's stated meeting, and then you get to repeat. And so that's what we did. I viewed it as my obligation, not unlike maybe if you look at World War II, and you had the period of time where they needed to raise the army that could then go and defeat the Nazis, we were raising an army. We had a bunch of willing men who wanted to be here. And the worst thing I could have done was say, no, we're going to slow everything down so that I can work on this program, because that's a passion of mine. It was like, nope, our number one obligation is to get every one of these men who wants to be a member to get to that end state. And then with all of those new members, let's go do something great with them. And that was what Wes and Pat Flynn and Gordy Clark and Mark Kimsey and Kevin and Stuart and all of the men that have come after me, that was, I guess, my gift to them is, here you go, a lot of great fresh men to work with to take our lodge forward. So I wouldn't change anything, because it was a wonderful opportunity to just do the work on a weekly basis.
That's awesome.
And I just couldn't imagine being so busy. Holy cow! I mean,
Yeah.
being pretty.
That's a lot. Yeah,
Yeah.
It was
a lot
nuts.
of degrees.
And the challenge that the thing that I can offer to all Masons and masters especially who find themselves in that position was, well, we had all these young men that were coming into the lodge. One of the challenges we had was we didn't have enough to field our own third degree crew, and I heavily relied on both the past masters of the Shrine and the Scottish Rite to do those degrees for us, because we didn't have enough guys who knew the work and who were available to do it. So we were not able to do our own third degrees during that time, but now we can. Why can we? Because of all those guys who came in, and now they've all they're all passionate about the ritual, and we built our own capability. And that was the thing that I recognized. I said, listen, you got to build the army, and then it can self-sustain. And we're very fortunate in the fact that we can self-sustain now our own third degrees, because we have so many good men who understand the ritual and love to play the parts.
That's where we're very fortunate that our lodge is very strong in its ritual and continues to be strong and remains strong.
All right, and so I know you, Worshipful Wells. So you have, I know you know a lot about the history of our lodge. What can you tell us about the history of Natoma?
The history of Natoma Lodge is just fascinating. And if you ever get the opportunity to get into, I'm going to use the air quotes here, the vault, right, which is the cinder block enclosure that we have in the small dining room where all the original records are kept, to read the meeting minutes from the 1880s of the lodge is just an absolute fascinating trip into the minds and lives that our brothers were facing back in those times. And it's very existential. Because you see the florid script with which they wrote in cursive, and some of it is in pencil, and the pencil is very faded and difficult to read. Sometimes it's in ink. It's gall ink, and so the paper can begin to degrade, right, with the iron and the iron oxide that was in the old ink that they used. But the things that they faced were just incredible. I can recall reading one particular stated meeting where the brethren needed to choose which furniture of the lodge was going to be covered by the insurance policy, because they didn't have enough money to cover everything they wanted. And so they had to pick between the couch and the chair and the various, items inside, because each one cost 6 cents, 5 cents, 4 cents. And when it all added up, they needed like $14 to cover the lodge for the year. And they were having trouble scraping the cash together. And so when you see these types of decisions that they were faced, because there was 14 guys that were members of the lodge at the time, it just blows you away to think of where they were then And would it not have been for the efforts that they did on that day and the decisions that they made, the three of us would not be having this conversation. It just reminds you of the strength and the frailty of the chain that binds us through the years. And it's something that all of us should remember, because every one of the decisions that we make for Natoma Lodge now has that same impact. So I have a key. I think it still works. And every once in a while, I go into the archives to resurrect some of this amazing history that we've had. But yeah, I have some. Unfortunately, I am like a something that we used to do. Jeff doesn't know about this, and maybe Noel does. We used to take a cassette tape and we make a copy with a second cassette tape. And a copy of a copy of a copy would begin to degrade. I am the copy of the copy of the copy when it comes to history. There were other men who were even greater historians, and I like to think I think I'm a pale shadow of that. But fortunately, some of them have documented that, and between what I've read and what they've provided, I can give a pretty good accounting of some of the major milestones that Natoma Lodge went through in the last 160 plus years.
And that's another reason for this podcast that Jeff presented, was wanting to capture some of that history, right? We want to take advantage of that. So hopefully as this continues on, we'll be able to talk to some of these brothers that are still around, been around for some time, and capture that history, right? So that degradation of the ink doesn't hit us, and we'll have video and voice.
Yeah.
Terrible audio of the Worshipful Master.
Well, I'm a little more concerned about the visual presentation of the current master.
That can always be blurred out.
If we can edit that or maybe use AI to enhance that would be good.
That would be awesome. Get that like the rock look.
Well, I was thinking more Robert Redford. Unfortunately, we just
Hey,
lost
I'll go
him.
for that too.
All right.
Yeah.
So it's hard to believe, but Natoma Lodge actually started underwater. And by that I mean that Natoma Lodge in 1854, the original dispensation of our lodge was issued in the town to a lodge in the town of Mormon Island. And Mormon Island is now at the bottom, or at least close to the bottom, of Folsom Lake. And since in the last like 15, 20 years with the different droughts that we've had, actually some of the town has been exposed from the flooding that it happened when they created that lake originally. So that's really where Natoma started with Brother William Wallace. So yes, W. Wallace. Don't So for those of us who are Braveheart fans, he was the original master of our lodge, and they got their charter on May 4th of 1855. And as later, just subsequent to that, a few years later, that was moved to Folsom. But they didn't have their own building. That was not uncommon. Owning a building was tough. Remember that we're talking about the gold rush days. Lots of go-go money back then. That was the original dot-com boom, if you want to call it, that California experienced back in the day. And so the original brothers, and I want to say there was roughly 14 of them, they didn't have enough money to buy their own place, and so they rented it from the Oddfellows that had a building inside of Folsom, and that was not uncommon back in those days. Fraternal organizations had trouble reaching the critical mass necessary to get their things, and so a lot of them shared the same building space. And so that was where they originally started renting from the Oddfellows in Sutter Street. They'd always wanted to have their own building, and so they were finally able to build their own building in the spring of 1870. And that was on Sutter and Wool Street. from there, so there was great festivities. Everybody was happy, and then came the universal issue that all Masonic lodges faced at the time, which was fire. And in 1871, in May again, fire swept through the building, burned it all down. And what is interesting is that a man who was not a Mason rushed into the burning building and saved the original charter, the Holy Bible square and compass, and some of the officers' regalia, which we have on display, right? The original silver. We're talking about, 100% silver square compass, right? The jewels that the officers wore, which were saved by Mr. Herman Holsinger, who later became a member of the lodge, but he was not a member of the lodge when he saved all of that stuff. And the fun thing was, during my year as master, our most worshipful master was Holsinger. So I like to tell him, I like to tell him that story. They were not related as near as we could tell. So, and actually, even once it was in, so that was unfortunately what had happened, and a lot of the records got consumed in the fire. And so that's one of the reasons why the records really start. They start well from 1880s forward, because prior, fire ate it all up. Now, we had insurance in the amount of $1,500, which was paid by the Fireman's Fund. So still in existence as a business, but the Fireman's Fund insurance company paid off on the damages that were done to that unfortunate fire. So then the brothers of Natoma Lodge, with their hat in hand and tail between their legs, went back to Granite Lodge number 62 of the International Order of Oddfellows. Hey, can we use your building to house our lodge meetings? And then they went after trying to get their own lodge again, and that came in 1880, and that was located at 805 and a half Sutter Street, the third floor, where Hop Sing's Chinese restaurant. So the very top floor, that was rented by our brothers, and that became the new Natoma Lodge. So then Natoma Lodge was about to wink out of existence in 1884. So 4 years later, the lodge had gotten to the point where they didn't have enough members. I think it was 10 or less, maybe 9, maybe 7. And they were on the verge of collapse. But another lodge was also on the verge of collapse, and that was Latrobe Lodge, 189, and they were out in Latrobe. And they were scheduled to consolidate with another lodge, but I cannot recall. This is covered in the 150 years of Mason, or 50 years of Masonry. We have a couple of wonderful books in our library, and this has the details. Something happened with the lodge that they were going to consolidate with, and that fell apart. And so they turned around and consolidated with Natoma Lodge back in it's getting a little darker, 1884. And so it was because of the brothers of Latrobe Lodge, number 189, that Natoma Lodge exists today. Because if they hadn't consolidated, we would have lost the critical mass, and we would have given up our charter because there was nobody to consolidate with. So there's another one of those inflection points, right? If you think about a Star Trek episode where they talk about the time travel all the time, right? That was, you wanted to kill Natoma Lodge, that's the day you went there, and that would have been it, right? If that hadn't happened. And so fast forward to current times, and that's where we have our modern lodge today. And if I remember correctly, so Charles F. Anderson, he first originally donated the land for our building. Hence, it is now, and he was a past master of the lodge. That is known as the New Temple. That is on Market in Duchow. That is where our building is currently. And then throughout the 1960s and 50s in post World War II, Cold War America, the Brethren of Natoma Lodge built with sweat equity the first lodge building, the first portion of it that is seated at Duchow and Market currently. And what was typically what they would do was many of them, over 120,000 people worked at Aerojet at that time. Think about that. I mean, what's Folsom? 70, 90,000 people. So imagine everybody in Folsom working at Aerojet, working in a in a Cold War era where we're manufacturing all sorts of different weapons. And so what would happen is the brothers would be working at, the majority of them were working at an Aerojet in the day, and then they would come on nights and weekends to work on the lodge, electricians, carpenters, mason, actual bricklayers. And it was not uncommon for guys to, show up at the lodge at 5 and work until 8 or 9 and then go home and, then have dinner and spend time with their families. And ditto on the weekends. They would show up in the morning. Wives would come and bring them lunch. Yeah, for all I know, the wives were, had trowel and pick in hand, and they were helping our brothers build that lodge. And the heat came from a cut in half 55-gallon oil drum with wood and charcoal in it. And when it came time to pay the lighting bill, as men walked in, there was a coffee can, and they'd throw loose change in, and that's how they were paying the electric bill. And it was through that eventually we had the first original lodge hall built. And then in the 1990s, Brother Joe Miller, past master, passed away and endowed the lodge with what is now the Lodge Endowment. Joe Miller was master of the lodge in the 60s, and you'll see his photo up on the wall as well as in our display cabinet. And what Joe had from a wealth perspective was land. And his home was this white clapboard siding, not much to look at, in the middle of fields filled with star thistle that made up where you see the Rainbow Bridge and the new bridge coming together, where the chart house is and the Chevron station and everything that's over there. He owned all that land, and it was all vacant, and except his house. And you'll see they called it Sleepy Hollow Lodge because he did a lot of coaching and a lot of things out there. So they actually named his house Sleepy Hollow Lodge #1. And that's where all the Masons would go for coaching, and they would use it for business meetings, etc., trying to figure out how they were going to build the lodge up. So, and there's photographs of this. I would encourage all Brother Masons to go into the beautiful library that Worshipful Dave Legala, it was his inspiration to fund that library with all the cabinetry and organization that we have, and read some of this in the photo albums that are set aside inside of that library. And you can see a lot of the pictures of the brothers putting this together, including Joe Miller, including a picture of his house, and there's descriptions of all of this. It's just amazing to see. And it was through Joe Miller's endowment, because he sold all of that land, and that money became what has funded Natoma Lodge ever since. Man, I'm doing a lot of talking.
Well, that's kind of why we have you on here. So, well,
and I did not, obviously Joe passed away before I got to meet him. So, the stories of Joe live on through the brothers like Paul Tibbins, John Holko, Harold Rapstat, Earl Campbell, and Ed Williamson, all great men who have, gone before us to the Celestial Lodge above.
Well, and we thank you for taking the time to share a little bit of the history of the lodge. And now, before we wrap up, we wanted to take a little time to look at the future of the lodge and just kind of touch upon, some of our little 5-year strategic plan we got kind of looking ahead.
Sure.
Not going into too much detail because obviously a lot of it's still up in the air, but if you wanted to kind of touch upon some of the things we're exploring.
Well, let's talk about what FIST was, FYST, the 5-year strategic team. That was a program that was implemented by Worshipful Pat Flynn, who was my senior warden. And he was a major in the Air Force, and he had an excellent vision or excellent understanding of the fact that the progressive line and all of the supporting bodies needed to align and develop a 5-year rolling plan that Natoma could live with and follow, so that you just didn't have these disjointed set of programs. Basically, not unlike, if you want to think about it, our federal government. With each election, you have the potential for things to change. You'll have a particular administration have one objective, another administration comes in, it's a different objective, undoes the other administration, right? They recognized the dysfunction that can come from that and said, let's see if we can get everybody aligned to a vision. And we keep moving in the same direction, and we'll course correct. Yeah, okay. As new information develops, as the financial situation of the lodge changes, as the membership changes, as the values of the lodge change, you adjust it. But you keep moving in a universal direction that everybody can get behind. And it was brilliant. And through Pat and the subsequent progressive line that came through him, Wes Minderman, Mark Kimsey, these men helped set up a variety of different lodge improvements that everybody currently enjoys today. As an example, the inside of our lodge room used to have, in the back row, where there are currently the benches that have the blue carpet, we have the blue carpet, and we have the theater seats. Okay, it used to be that our back bench was this hideous red color, extremely hard wooden benches, and the chairs were the same metal chairs that we use in the large dining hall. And the carpet, I can't even remember what it was. And that cushion that I talked about, the masters, all of the cushions and all of the furniture, in the 3-pillared officers as well as the north, which had all been designed by the prisoners at Folsom Prison in the 1800s, well, the cushions dated back to that point. And so they had springs that were broken, poked an officer in a very unique way that wasn't necessarily very pleasant. And so all that stuff, that's what it used to be like. And Pat, his first project was get new carpeting in. And so we had new carpeting on the benches and new carpeting, but we still had the hideous chairs. And then I can't remember whether it was Mark or somebody else, but we came up with the theater seats. And I don't know whose idea it was. I can't remember whether it was Pat or some other brother who came upon a theater that was going out of business. And we got these theater seats for dirt cheap. You had to buy them, you had to take them in bulk. And then we had those all reupholstered to match the carpeting. And now you have the theater seats that are there. And then came the next improvement. I think we needed to replace a lot of the commercial appliances that were in the kitchen at the time, which were beginning to fail. We had got them all used. It was a great deal, but you know how it is with sometimes you buy used products, they eventually begin to fail, and the cost to keep them up and keep repairing them was greater than buying something new. So we renewed the kitchen. Then we renewed our foyer with that beautiful trestle board. Then we did the library project with Legala. And then we did the window project with Worshipful Dan Leonard, or Leonard, if for people who want to tease the poor man. And so this 5-year rolling plan rolled for a good 10 years, and then it petered out. And that's not to say that the lodge hasn't had good direction and that we've done other things for the lodge hall that have been good, but we've had some unique opportunities come up recently and some capital improvements that Masons, either Worshipful Masters or other brothers have wanted to sponsor. And it's time to get that kind of mindset back in play. And so we've formed a new group that is made up of elements of the Hall Association, the Progressive Line, and the trustees to try to align on that rolling 5-year plan again. And we're not calling it FIST, we're calling it a long-range planning team or a long-range planning committee. LRPS, for those of you in the military who knew about long-range stuff. And it's certainly it's FIST 2.0. It's certainly a tribute and a loving legacy to Pat Flynn. And now we have these wonderful opportunities to build a patio cover over the and I don't even want to think. Let's don't even think about the improvement we did to the building with the patio and the wrought iron fencing and all the other improvements that we did. You can thank the 5-year, the FIST concept for the parking lot, all of that. You can thank that, that helped establish it. And then it was basically after that it all petered out. But don't think that parking lot was like some great brainchild. That took 15 years of hemming and hawing and committees before we finally pull the trigger on that. So now we've got these opportunities to build a patio cover, security fencing, potentially do a rejuvenation or rehab of some of the interior of the building. And of course, 311 Market Street, the property next door to us, has become available for sale and presents an interesting opportunity that Natoma may or may not decide to execute on. And so we've reformed that group with the same concept to try to say, we got all these great opportunities. How do we pay for them? How do we, paying for them is even the least amount of our problems. It's once we do these things, what do we do next? How do we take the lodge forward? And it's a very exciting time for Natoma Lodge.
I agree. I think it is a very exciting time for Natoma Lodge because it's going to launch us in a new direction. And it's going to take a lot of brothers. You mentioned sweat equity earlier, and it's going to take a little bit more of that sweat equity coming up. And we've got the brothers for it. This lodge has it, and I know we do. And so I'm excited to see where it's going to go, how it's going to go, and how it all plays out. Between the remodeling, the fencing, possibly the marketplace, the patio cover project. These things are all very, very exciting things to be a part of. And in the years to come, seeing it, and will be the history that gets talked about later on. So,
plus with the 175th coming up, it'll be a huge milestone, and it'll be great to see where we are, like from now till then, and then to look back from the 175th back, to the beginning of our lodge and see all the changes. It'll just be really cool to see all that change too. So
from 14 guys to 180s, plus, right?
Yeah.
So.
Well, and like you said, the force of good. If we continue to expand our amazing scholarship program, if we can expand the footprint of the building so that it gains greater use in the community, and with the interest in our fraternity, will other men, young and old, become drawn to what we have to offer. It encourages me, and it gives me hope in what the future holds. There are plenty of naysayers, and there are plenty of headwinds that society faces. And Masonry can continue to be a force of good that fights back the evil and fights back the negative and helps lift society and lift up our fellow man. And that is an exciting thing to be a part of.
It is. It absolutely is. And Worshipful, I would again like to thank you for your time tonight. I know you have a very busy schedule, and maybe in some time to come we could circle back on a few of these things, especially some of these projects come into to play, or as we see how they fall in. And but again, just thank you for your time. Thank you for your leadership and just all the help you've offered to the lodge and given to the lodge. I mean, you've been an invaluable member as a board of the trustees. You, brother Alex Chong, brother Doug Roberts, you guys, a lot of time, a lot of brothers don't see what you guys do in the background, and the time spent taking care of that endowment. And I'd like to I'd like to thank the board of trustees. You guys have been very helpful to me and the advice given throughout my year, before my year, during my year, and I know you guys have been helpful to the progressive line. For many years.
We just love to see these great young men come through, watch them grow, watch them contribute, and watch other men respond. It's just an honor to be a part of.
Well, the honor is definitely ours having you, to look up to and to learn from. So, yeah, thank you so much.
Well, except for the fact that I'm starting to look like I'm a member of the witness protection program as the sun goes down, and I haven't turned the lights on in the house. So,
well, as we wrap up really quick, I just want to take a moment, to let the brothers know that, if you want to get involved in things, you want to be a member of FIST, because during my year, it's still going to be FIST. Okay. You can talk to Worshipful Wells, myself, Worshipful Lagala, any member that's currently part of it. You can come to a hall board meeting, brothers. They are open. You don't have to be a member of the hall board to get involved. You can come and sit in, listen in. Obviously we talk about these things during the lodge stated meetings, which our next one is what, the 2nd?
Sounds right.
Yep, October 2nd.
Sounds right.
October 2nd is our next meeting, and which will be followed up by our breakfast that Saturday. So looking forward to seeing brothers then. And we got, like I said, our next hall board meeting does plan to be an exciting conversation.
I'll be there. I'll be there.
That'll be the first Wednesday, which is going to be October 8th at 7 p.m., brothers.
I'll be there, and I'll be looking for brothers to provide input. Where do we want to take it next?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, with that, brothers, Worshipfuls, thank you so much for your time, and Worshipful Wells, thank you for breaking us in and being our first guest. And we are definitely honored to have you here on our show. And we'll see how the rest of these shows go. And we hope we can.
I look forward.
Do a good job here.
I look forward to the next. I look forward to what you've got to bring forward, Jeff. I really appreciate the fact that you are looking for avenues to respect the history, but utilize what is new to continue to make Masonry relevant in our community today.
Oh, thank you, Worshipful. All right, guys. Well, with that, thank you very much. Have a great night, and we'll end the show here.
All right.
Just a moment here.
See you guys in a bit.
Take care, brothers.